as she does after every Bills victory. Bills team reporter Maddy Glab for what else? The Maddy Awards, presented by Energy Mark, the official energy supplier to the Buffalo Bills. Good afternoon, Madeline. How are we doing?
Doing good today. Doing good. Excited the Bills have another win under their belt. 2 regular season games remaining, 1 at home, 1 on the road. I am ready to finish this out and head into the playoffs, guys. I'm ready for it. I'm ready.
Players are too. It's like, can we just not?
Just punt on the last 2 weeks.
Here's the problem, and people get this when just sit your starters. You can't sit your starters. You can sit 1 or 2 guys. You only have 40 guys, and you go 22 deep. You go 44 deep, just having a 2 deep depth chart.
Yeah.
There's just not enough guys. So guys got to play.
Guys do have to
you got to play.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
And you don't get to rest, and you risk injury, and then you regret it. And there you go.
One guy who played and played quite well gets the Mr. Dependable award.
Mr. Dependable, it's going to our running back, James Cook. When things were not working in this game on offense, you could lean on James Cook. He provided that spark that the offense needed. He had the hot hand throughout this entire game. 1 rushing touchdown, 1 receiving touchdown, averaged 9.1 yards per carry. He did a great job of finding those holes and patiently waiting for them to open. Once they opened, he hit it for extra yards. He had that rushing touchdown go 46 yards. His ability to also catch the ball this season, I think, has improved greatly. In the past couple of years, there were some plays where James Cook wanted back as a receiver. This year, I think he's done a good job of getting his hands on the football. You saw a receiving touchdown by him over the shoulder grab and making sure that he was in bounds to get the touchdown. He now ties for the most rushing touchdowns this season with Jalen Hurts and ties for the most scrimmage touchdowns with Jamar Chase. That is a great place to be, in good company. He's making a case for how really talented running backs truly help your offense.
Yeah, and it's balanced out this offense in a big way. It's also taken some of the load off of Josh Allen, who, as we remember, had like 15 rushing touchdowns himself last year. Any hits you can take off of him down near the goal line in the low red zone, you'll take it for sure. And kudos to James for finishing off those runs in the end zone.
Yeah, that was those 2 touchdowns they needed them. And I told you last night, we were doing the show last night at the post-game live. When you're in a hole, and the Bills were 14 points in the hole, the first thing you got to do is stop digging. And James Cook's the guy who took the shovel away from those guys.
Because I think we all know that James has breakaway speed, home run speed. That is evident. I don't know if we were watching one of the slowest defenses in the league yesterday, but James looked faster yesterday than maybe I've ever seen him. I don't know what it was.
And it's hard to be fast when it's that cold outside.
Yeah, and
you're moving a little slower when your blood's thicker.
Talking to some other people around the league who had already seen New England leading up to this game, they did tell me that in their opinion, New England has collectively a slow defense. So maybe that's why. But, man, I felt like he was really running fast yesterday, like the fastest I've seen him all season. And he's been fast. I mean, he's never not fast, but he looked even faster. I don't know. Am I crazy?
No, you're not. And I saw the same thing on Ty Johnson and Ray Davis runs when they bounced it outside as well. Remember the one where Josh chased him down the sideline? Bouncing it out to the outside and getting the edge like that, it usually doesn't happen because they have recovery speed.
But it did against this team.
It did work against this team because they didn't have the recovery speed they needed.
All right, second half King Award.
Second half king, it's going to our defensive coordinator, Babich, because in the first half, this defense was having a really hard time. They allowed 14 points, 17 first downs to a team that was averaging 16.6 first downs per game, almost 240 total yards of offense, and 20 minutes time of possession is what the Patriots finished with in the first half. In the second half, they come out looking like an entirely new team. You have 3 straight takeaways to really set the tone and get the momentum going in your favor. And they continue with these pressure packages that weren't working in the first half. They decide to throw some more pressure at rookie quarterback Drake May in the second half. It starts to work. It starts to get him off his spot, and that's where the defense starts to come alive and force those takeaways. Babich made the adjustments he needed to win this game.
Yeah, and it has been their calling card. And we talked about a little earlier in the show about how in the first 6 to 8 weeks of the season, they were slow starts and then rebounding in the second half, and they were shutting teams down offensively in the second half. They did it again last night, and although usually they get a little more help from their offense in the first half, even if their defense does struggle in the first half, not last night. I mean, it was a slog fest early on, and the defense really pried them out of it with the turnovers.
All right, the Next Man Up award.
Next man up, it's going to our Swiss Army knife on defense. His name is Cam Lewis. 3 starters are out in the secondary, so Cam Lewis comes in and plays safety. He has his first career interception in the end zone. It saved what could have been a possible touchdown because the Patriots had a great field position at that point with a first down. So they had a couple tries to score a touchdown, but Cam Lewis said no, intercepts it in the end zone. McDermott also said after this game that Cam Lewis hasn't played a ton of safety this season, hasn't practiced at that spot a bunch. So for him to make a game-changing play at that point in the game where the Bills needed the defense to come alive, this was their second straight takeaway. The first one was that forced fumble. Then you get the interception. So for him to be a part of the takeaways that happened in bunches there, I think really said a lot about his preparedness for this role, for this opportunity. This is a guy who plays nickel, who can play corner, who can play safety, who plays on special teams. They trust him to do a lot. He's been on this team for several seasons now, and he's the guy who you go to when, hey, we're down somebody, we need somebody to step in. He definitely did so. He's got a great story, an undrafted player who came out of university at Buffalo, spent his first 3 seasons on the practice squad, ends up making the 53-man roster in 2022, and has been a key role player since then.
And then, of course, the Right on Time award.
Right on time, it's going to Taron Johnson. The Bills needed points. You're heading into the fourth quarter with a 3-point lead, and it just didn't feel like it was enough. It felt like you needed another touchdown. You needed something to happen, and the offense had just punted. So the special teams does a great job of downing it at New England's 10. Drake May has a lateral play that he fumbles, and so Taron Johnson recovers it and scores. Taron Johnson is always ready for a big play. He says that he envisions these things happening and it already goes through his mind before it happens, so he's ready to make the play when the moment happens for him. He had an interception return for a touchdown against the Colts in Week 10 on the first play of the Colts drive. He had an interception against Aaron Rodgers on the final drive to help seal Buffalo's victory. He's somebody who has made game-changing plays throughout his career in Buffalo, continues to do so, has had multiple touchdowns now this season. That touchdown gave Buffalo the 24-14 lead at that point in the game, and you just felt like the Bills needed to score, whether it was on offense or defense. It happens to be on defense, and because of Taron Johnson.
Yeah, and Greg Rousseau deserves a big-time
Yes, he
assist
does.
on that play because that play is designed to get at least 5 yards, and it's the right tackle's job to cut the defensive end on that play so that whole side is open, and you have the 2 receivers running clear-out routes, and Greg Rousseau blows up the cut block and avoids it, and then absolutely blows up Ramondre Stevenson, which leads to the fumble. And that is Greg Rousseau's 3rd forced fumble of the season. I think he's tied for the league lead among defensive ends with 3 forced fumbles this year.
Rousseau, the ball's on the ground. Rousseau thinks it's alive. He's playing it like it's alive, and he looks like he's in a bad dream, one of those dreams where you can't get out of there.
He looked like Shamu. He looked like Shamu out of water at SeaWorld.
He can't get his feet. He slips and he falls, and he's trying to get back up to get to the thing. And Taron Johnson obviously flies in, jumps right on it. He runs by.
He's looking like a walrus here.
He's going to pick it up on the run, and then the thing stops, and he can't get back to it. And like 4 guys are there before he can actually gather himself to get up
And the field's
get it.
slippery at that point.
I've heard a lot of
It's
players.
hard and slippery.
I've heard a lot of players talk about that. Drake May has obviously never played here up until yesterday, and even he said, the field surface gets very slick when it's this cold, and there's other turf fields that experience that. I don't know if there's a good answer for that. I mean, it's a dry field, but it's cold. And,
I think
and it's slick.
The answer for that is just wait till it's 28 or 30 instead of 15 or 12
10
or 9, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was 9 by the end.
There
of
is
the
a
game.
threshold there, though, no question.
They just get so slick out there.
Yeah.
It's, I don't know how you fix that. You probably can't.
Well, you build a stadium across the street that
And
has
put it on
grass
natural
it.
grass. Yes, that's right, with a heated coil
Yes.
system underneath.
We
There's
got
your
it
answer.
fixed.
We got it fixed in 26. The Toughest Nails Award.
Tough as nails is going to our linebacker, Dorian Williams. He was limited throughout practice all week with an elbow injury, ends up being questionable for this game. Does play. He's not there as a starter on defense in that first series they were on the field. He does come out later on. McDermott said after the game that they didn't want to play Dorian as much because of that injury, so they wanted to kind of share the load with him and Balin Spector. Well, Balin Spector goes out of this game, so Dorian needs to take over, and he was all over the place. That was one defensive player that I saw consistently trying to blow through the offensive line and sack Drake May. I just felt like he was all over the field, pressuring May and flying to the football. He finishes with a fumble recovery and ties for the second most tackles with 8 in this one.
He's been productive. There's no debating it. He has been productive. When Milano came back, Milano's played most of the last 2 games when he returned to the lineup. Dorian Williams was still the team's leading tackler, even though he's getting no snaps on defense anymore for the last 3 weeks. He was still the team's leading tackler. I think that just points to how many plays he has made for this defense this season. So he's been fun to watch when he's been in there, for sure.
Well, Matt, we're in this spot, Maddie, where it's weird, and our callers, we're kind of talking around in circles about how weird it is for the Bills not to have too much, to have a little something on the horizon, maybe to play for, maybe to play to keep people away from stealing the number 2 seed. But they're already in the playoffs. They're already division champs.
Worst they can do is the 3 seed.
The worst they can do is the 3 seed, and nobody even knows who the 5, 6, and 7 seeds are going to be anyway. So you don't even know what your matchup's going to be. And that leads to a game like to the start of a game like we saw yesterday against the Patriots, right? I mean, they're kind of playing with their food a little bit.
And we heard from Bills quarterback Josh Allen after the game. He said, we're at a point in the season where we're trying to figure out how much do we want to show these teams, how much do we want to save for. There's a point where you have to toe the line, and we're right there. It's a good place to be in, right? Because you know you're in the playoffs. You know you want to save some great stuff for the playoffs. But then it's a tough place to be because it's like, what are we doing on offense? Do we want to try and hit a rhythm here? Do we want to try and practice some things before we get into the playoffs? I mean, it's a good problem to have, but it's definitely one that makes life a little bit harder in the next 2 weeks.
It's also exacerbated by the fact you're going to see this exact same team in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you want to have something left in the bag for them then, too, even if you were playing lights out.
Yeah, but that game might be a throwaway game anyway.
Well, it might be.
That's true if they lock in the 2 seed.
Even in a scenario where you got to win every game, you may leave some stuff in the bag.
I get
this
it.
team
I get it.
round.
I just think when you're not playing with all the bullets in your gun, I think players struggle with what their identity is because we're not turning to this, which we like a lot, or we're not going to use that because we like that a lot against this kind of coverage. So we're going to hold that back. So what are we today? Like, I think they almost ask themselves that question and they don't know the answer.
Well, you got to go out. You go out and play, but you're out there going, all right, we've got this. This is the perfect call on this. And then you go out there and it's like, well, this isn't the perfect call. We're going to stay in it. Then it's like, well, what are we doing out here? You know, it's a little bit of that going on.
And one player that I wonder about is like somebody who you would maybe want to get going a little bit in the next 2 weeks who missed some time is Keon Coleman. Do you want to get a rookie like him who was a big part of your offense before he got injured with big plays? He was averaging, I think it was the most yards after catch per reception among rookies, and I think it's still pretty high up there. But he has that big 64-yard reception 2 weeks ago now. He has this. In this game against the Patriots, he was targeted twice, has 1 reception for 17 yards. Is that somebody that you wanna scheme some things up for in the next 2 weeks to make sure, hey, rookie is going to be in his first playoff appearance ever as an NFL player? Maybe we want to get him going with some things so that we feel like he's in a good rhythm when we get to the playoffs.
Yeah, I think Cooper falls into that bucket
Well,
too because the last 2 games, he hasn't really done a whole lot.
I had a rant a minute ago, Maddie, that they still got 2 weeks to do that. I mean, good grief.
Yes, they do.
I mean, they sewed the division up a month ago, and then they got hurt. They got some injuries and stuff. So if they want to get sharp with these guys, they got plenty of opportunity to do that, despite yesterday where they didn't. I mean, so there's just, they really are in a kind of malaise of, what do we really want to get done in these next 2 weeks? And what do we really need to get done in these next 2 weeks?
Is this where the talent of your coaching staff really shines in the next 2 weeks, where you have to, you're probably having conversations with players of, hey, we know we're in the playoffs, but we still have to play like our culture says. Like we don't want to fall by the wayside of what we believe in and what we're known for over the next 2 weeks.
I just think the thing that even the coaches are wrestling with internally is what has happened to this team last year in the postseason and this year during the season. And those two problems are last year getting injured at the end of the year or having to play in the wild card round and suffering injuries. You can avoid that at least here at the end of the regular season to get healthy, presumably, assuming the seed gets locked in this week. You can use next week as a bye of sorts. But at the same time, the other prevailing problem has been slow starts for your offense and defense. So at the same time, you'd like to be sharp going into the postseason, and you're usually only doing that if you're playing. So the balancing act here, I think, is one that the coaching staff is even wrestling with here with 2 weeks to go.
Yeah, and you don't want to sleepwalk into the playoffs because there's not that it's hard to get up for a playoff game. It should be so easy to get up for a playoff game. I believe that this entire team is capable of getting up for a playoff game. But you just think about using those 2 weeks to help use and push some of that momentum into the playoffs. It's, there's going to be some interesting conversations happening in the locker room within the coaching staff over the next 2 weeks of how do we want to approach this from the right way to make sure that we keep our players healthy, but we also are making sure that we're fine-tuning our mentals as well.
I'll say this, though. This team, I'm confident this team, when they want to show up and play and they're going to give their best, you're going to know it.
Yeah.
They did it against the Kansas City Chiefs. They did it against the Detroit Lions. They even did it against the San Francisco 49ers and against the Rams, even on the road in a game they lost. They showed up. And they understood the moment. I think that this, with guys like Josh and Deion Dawkins and Milano and now Terrell Bernard and Rasul Douglas, they got some guys out there that are like, listen, guys, let's go. And they're going to be able to set the tone. So I have no doubt that they're going to show up all guns blazing when the games do matter in the playoffs and all that. So because they've proven that just within the last month that they can do that multiple times in a row.
Maddy, thanks as always for the Maddy Awards. We hope to see you next week here because that should mean that the Bills have the 2 seed all locked up.
With a win. Lock it up.
Go!